I've told you many times, Advent is my favorite season of the church's year because Advent, it's just really it. Advent really, it returns us to our original position as Christians. Because as Christians, the number one thing we're doing is we're waiting. Okay, we're waiting for God to show up. We're waiting for God to do what only God can do. We all know Jesus. We all know his resurrection. We all know his ascension, but that's it. Jesus ascends, and we're just like, where'd he go? We're waiting for his return. That's what he promises. Just pay attention to the prayers we hear at Mass, especially right before communion. There's all these prayers about peace being given to us, unity being given to all these prayers. But then we're always praying for Jesus' return, his coming in glory, we say. So many of these things, but it's all about that. So that's why I love Advent. It just refocuses our attention. Okay, one of my favorite images of this, though, and I think I've shared it before, it's an image I steal from J.R.R. Tolkien, from his story, The Lord of the Rings. Okay, Tolkien was a very devout Catholic. And when he wrote The Lord of the Rings, he didn't just write it because he's like, hey, I've got a great idea for a story. He wrote it because he wanted to help people to see. Okay, he wanted to help people see with a Christian worldview. This is why he wrote this whole entire story. Well, it's like we were talking back this fall, right? Meta news. We needed to go beyond our current mindset and see things differently. That's what Tolkien was doing. He was giving us eyes to see. One of my favorite images, and the one I love to use during Advent, is from that second book, or the second movie, if you know, we all know. Okay, from the second movie, where there's this huge battle. Okay, the race of men, humankind is facing the forces of evil. And there they are, holed up at Helm's Deep, this huge fortress is called. There they are, and they know that they're going to lose. That's the thing. They are hopelessly outnumbered, hopelessly outgunned. They are going to lose. And yet, in that situation, what happens? There's one character, his name's Gandalf. I know I'm a nerd, I know. There's this one character, his name's Gandalf. And uncoincidentally, this guy has risen from the dead earlier in the story. And he says, all right, I got to go. But when I come back, we will win. So just wait for my return and we will win. And spoiler alert, when he comes back, they win. Okay. This is a great image of us. And this is why Tolkien gives us this image. It's an image of Jesus himself. Okay, here we are, the race of men, humankind, fighting our daily battles, struggling through our daily struggles. Here's this other guy, his name's Jesus, who uncoincidentally rose from the dead, who says, all right, I've got to go, his ascension, but don't worry, I will return. And when I come back, then we will have victory. Just keep up the good fight until I get back. Right? This is why Tolkien gives us this image, to help us to see. Yes, we are engaged in these daily struggles, these daily battles, but our great hope as Christians, as Catholics, our fundamental hope, is that Jesus will return. So Advent's that time where we place ourselves again in that position of expectant waiting, just waiting for him to do what only he can do. The question though is why? Like why? What are we waiting for? Why do we do this? And I did the math, it's been 497 days since I last quoted my favorite quote from Augustine, so I think I get to quote it again. Augustine would tell us, because we're restless, right? Our hearts are restless. That's the experience that we have as human beings. Life can be great, and yet we know there's something missing. There's this lack of peace. There's this lack of fulfillment. There's this lack of joy. There's this lack of there's something missing. There's just that tension. Even when life's going great, we're like, yeah, but there's got to be something more. Easy to feel when we're down in the dumps. We're just like, there's got to be something more. But even when we're doing great, it can be like, yeah, but what is it? What are we missing? What is that? So what do we do as we wait? Again, we want that peace. That's the word for it. We want that peace. But how do we get there? What are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? There's a very ancient saying, and it's in Latin. It's so ancient. There's a very ancient saying, and it goes, si vis pacem, para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. Si vis pacem. If you want peace, para bellum. Prepare for war. Okay, peace, that desire that we all have for peace, it's a great desire. It's the fundamental desire that things would just be, be worked out. But it doesn't happen by magic. Okay, it doesn't happen by magic. It doesn't happen because we're, during this Advent season, we're about to start making a bunch of Christmas cookies and putting Mariah Carey on blast. That's not going to bring that peace. It's going to be great, but it's not going to bring peace. Only Christ can bring peace. We know that. We know that. Only Jesus can do this. We know it. Great. But it's that question, well, yeah, but what the heck? Why can't he come tonight? Like, let's go. Hurry it up. Well, this is what that saying's getting at, but this is what all of Scripture, the whole narrative is getting at. CV's pod. If you want peace, great, awesome. But para bellum. Prepare for war. Prepare for battle. Wait, I know military metaphors, they can tend to rub us the wrong way. We like the nice Jesus. We don't like the war Jesus or anything. But there's a reason why Scripture uses war and battle as the number one metaphor for what life is like. St. Paul himself, our patron, right? Paul tells us to fight the good fight. He doesn't say take a good nap, wait for Jesus to show up. He says fight the good fight. Put on the full armor of God, Paul tells us. He then says things like, this battle, though, it's not against flesh and blood. There's not the normal kind of battles we think we need to fight. And then he says the weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. So not tanks and guns and drones and whatever else. Paul's trying to point our attention to, we're in a spiritual battle. That's what's going on. Si vis pacem para bellum. Prepare for war. Prepare for this spiritual battle. Because that lack of peace that we feel, this restlessness that we can feel, it's not, as much as we like to blame it on it, it's not because we don't have enough money. It's not because we don't have the right job. It's not because of this, that, or the other situation. The reason we don't have peace is not even because of those painful situations that we go through in life. The pain of divorce, the pain of death, the pain of losing someone. All those real things. Those are real things. But fundamentally, what the Scriptures reveal to us and what Jesus and Paul reveal to us, fundamentally, that lack of peace we feel is because there is a battle being waged against us. We just don't often have the eyes to see it. That's what Tolkien's trying to point our attention to. He's saying in these days, it's not just take a nap and wait for Jesus to show up again, be nice to each other. He's like, no, there's a real battle going on. It's a real battle. The enemy that we face, the tradition has pointed out to us. I was too dumb to figure it out, so I had to go plagiarize from somebody else. I plagiarized from St. Thomas Aquinas, so that's a pretty good source. St. Thomas Aquinas, and he points to the Scriptures to show this. But he says there's three enemies that we face. All throughout history, you can point and boil it down to the three enemies that we face. And that's the world, the flesh, and the devil. The world, the flesh, and the devil. Like, this is nothing new, but it's just often something that we can forget. These are the three enemies that we face. It's easy for us to leave it behind. It's easy for us to be like, Father, the devil, that's kind of old-fashioned, don't you think? Aren't we kind of past that? Oh, isn't that kind of pre-modern mythological thinking? We don't really think about the devil anymore, do we? When we think about the flesh as an enemy, we go, what are you even talking about? If it feels good, it must be good, right? That's how life works. And then when we get to the world as an enemy, it's just like we don't even know what to do with that one. And yet, time and time again, all throughout our tradition, these are pointed out to us as three enemies waging war against our very self, against our soul, against our life. It's waging war against us. And that's just the simple truth. That's what Tolkien was trying to help us to see. As followers of Jesus Christ, this isn't just Candyland and take a nap time. The life that we live now, the time that we live in now, it's one where there is a real battle going on. And it's not a battle against them or those guys over there. It's a real battle being fought right against us in our own life. It's a time for us to look at our life. So again, if we want that joy, if we want that fulfillment, if we want that peace that I know we want, para bellum, we have to prepare for war, for battle. Okay, in these weeks of Advent, this is what we want to dig into. The first that we want to just cover real briefly today is just that, is the devil. We don't need to talk about this all day because we've already talked about this a little bit. Back at the beginning of the year, during rerouting, we covered the devil himself and all those sorts of things. Important for us to remember, though, is one, the devil's very real. He's very active. He's doing great. Very healthy. Okay? But the devil himself is the enemy. The enemy is not whatever political party or whatever nemesis you still have from high school. Though that's not the enemy. The enemy is the enemy. massively important for us to know that. The enemy is the enemy. And because it's important to know this, because the enemy's goal for your life isn't just to get you to do some bad things or be impatient with your kids. That's not his goal. The enemy's goal for your life is destruction. It's to ruin you. It's to completely root out love in your life. This is nothing like, just kind of steal a couple cookies. That's his goal. No, he wants to destroy you. That's why St. Peter, in his letter, Peter will say things like, be sober and alert. Just like our readings say today, be watchful, be alert. Why? Because your opponent, again, not your high school nemesis, your real opponent, the devil, is prowling like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Resist him, Peter says. Solid in your faith. Resist him. Peter didn't say, oh yeah, don't worry about that. It's just kind of mythological. No, he said, you better wake up. You've got to be sober and alert. He's out there and he's prowling. How the devil's going to come after us, though, this is where we need to kind of take a gear shift down. We're really familiar with exorcist movies these days. The devil doesn't come after us trying to possess us, as much as the movies are going to try to tell you that. That's not his MO. The way the devil comes after us, his ordinary way of coming after us is through our mind. It's through deception. He's a liar. Jesus tells us, when Jesus talks about the devil, chapter 8 of John, he tells us his native language is lies. He is the father of lies. What the devil does to us is he tries to deceive us. The thing is, he doesn't come after us with those obvious lies like, you should kill your brother. That's not typically how he comes after us, because that's like, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't do that. He comes after us with much more subtle lies, but they're lies that can paralyze us and lead our lives to ruin. He's very clever. It's what he did in the beginning. What does he do with Adam and Eve? Does he tell Eve, you should kill Adam? No, he just says, did God really say that? That's all he does. Just sows simple doubt. That's all it took. The devil's very clever. He's been doing this a while. He knows how he works. He tells us simple lies that are very subtle, but they're so ingrained in us that sometimes we forget that they're not actually the truth. These come to us over the years, and we just hold on to them. They're things like, if people actually knew me, they really wouldn't want to hang out with me anymore. If they knew what I did, man, they would totally reject me. That's a simple lie we tell ourselves. Because why? Why would the devil use that? It places us in isolation, and we cut ourselves off from everybody else. It's a simple lie, and yet that's one we hold on to very often. It comes in the form of vows that we make. We tell ourselves, I'm never going to open up to anybody ever again. People just betray you. They just hurt you. It's not worth it. So we make this vow, I'm done with people. Again, what does it do? It places us in isolation, and we just cut everybody else out. It comes in the ways that we see the world. It's those lies we tell ourselves that, I know I should do this or that or the other, but I got to just work on my job right now because once I have X number of dollars, then everything will be okay and then things will be fine. It's a simple lie we tell ourselves, and we start cutting everything else out. Ultimately, the simple lie that the devil's going to feed us is, you would be a lot happier if you just did whatever you wanted. There's that church that tells you certain things. You don't really need to listen to that. There's that God guy that tells you certain things. He's just holding out on you. Don't worry about that. You just do what you want to do. Try to be happy. That's a lie straight from the devil himself again. Yet the devil doesn't come after us trying to possess us. He just feeds us simple lies. And when we hold on to them, that's when it leads our lives to ruin. The path forward from all of this is parabellum, preparing for war, preparing for that battle. The devil's trying to convince us that there is no battle, that he's not real, that it doesn't matter. But we know better. We know much better. There is a real battle going on. If we want a path forward, there's a lot. But first, let's one more gear shift down and recognize what's not the path forward. What's kind of leading us into all of this? You know how I love my studies? I love them so much. My new favorite study just came out. It shows that the average American adult spends, how many hours do you think on their phone a year? 2,800 hours. I looked it up for you. 2,800 hours. I'll do the math. That's 7 hours a day. And when you're like, well, that's just the kids, Father, you're right. The kids spend 7 hours a day on their phone, but adults, over the age of 50, still spend 5.5 to 6 hours on their phone. So it's pretty close. What do we do 7 hours a day on our phone? Scroll through Facebook. This is a fun fact for you. Did you know that Facebook never ends? You'll never get to the bottom. It's an infinite scroll. It doesn't end. Okay. We never get to the bottom. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all these things. So much digital content that we're consuming, 7 hours a day. In contrast to that, the average American adult spends 153 hours on Jesus-centered stuff each year. I'll do the math again. It's 25 minutes a day. 7 hours a day, 25 minutes a day. Okay. If the devil's number one tactic is to deceive us and to feed us lies, where do you think his new favorite tool and avenue for that is? Okay, you'll do the math. You can put it together. The path forward for us then is quite simple, and it's so simple, it's really hard. But it's the 4 S's I like to talk about. Silence, stillness, Scripture, and Sunday. Silence, stillness, Scripture, and Sunday. If we want a path forward away from the lies and to really combat this is how we fight. This is the battle. The battle, again, is not, I need to go buy a gun. It's not going to help you in this battle. The battle in this instance is silence, stillness, Scripture, and Sunday. Are we taking time in silence each day? There's my other new favorite study. It shows that there's a new anxiety out there. It's that people can't even go to the bathroom unless they have their phone with them. Don't smile if it's you, okay? We can't even sit in silence in the bathroom for 3 minutes. We can't do it. It's too hard. Silence is something that we need to cultivate, to be able to listen to the voice of God. Stillness is the other one. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, that we're just so darn busy. If we have a free afternoon, we immediately find a way to fill it with something because we're like, finally, something to do what I want to do. And it's just more busyness, though. Can we sit still for more than 5 minutes? What's the next one? Scripture, thanks. Scripture. Again, we saturate our minds 7 hours a day with our Facebook feed and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and whatever else. Are we saturating our mind with God himself, with the word that he reveals to us? And then Sunday. I've said before, if we transform the way that we live Sunday, we would literally transform the world. If we took Sunday not just as the day, a normal day, but I also have to go talk to Jesus real quick, but if we took Sunday as it truly is, as the day set apart for the Lord, as a day lived for God himself, as a day of rest given to us by God, that would change everything. Silence, stillness, Scripture, and Sunday. That's how we fight against the devil himself. Again, go back to Tolkien, to the Lord of the Rings, that scene at Helm's Deep. In the midst of that battle and those day-to-day struggles, they were sustained by hope that Gandalf's going to return. And he does. But in the midst of that waiting, it's the battle they had to fight. It's the same for us. It is no different. In this Advent season in particular, but just every day, we know Christ is going to return. That's our hope. But in the midst of that, there's a battle to be fought against the devil, the flesh, and the world. And that's the battle we continue with. The peace we desire, it's going to come. Christ will bring it. But if we want peace, para bellum, we have to prepare for war. We have to be ready for battle. Christ will come. He is coming. We just can't give up.